somebody turned to me and was like, yeah, it must be nice to just, grab a camera crew and go and shoot on location. I do all of this myself, just in case it wasn't evident. I have good portable equipment that I've, kind of put together over the years, and I go out and I film on my own. And well over 90% of the places I've filmed videos so far are within walking distance of my apartment in Montreal. And it's nice here. It's an island. We have to build up, not out. So this is just down the street from my apartment, as it just so happens, being on an island. And there's another island across. That's Nuns Island, in case you want to look that up. But I'm not here to talk about that, although I could. But there's this great concept that I learned from a book called How to Make a Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven. And that's by Dr. John F. DeMartini, who, and a book I highly recommend. I learned a lot from that book, and I've listened to it many, many times. And I say listen to it. I recommend the audiobook because he's actually presenting the stories to an audience. So the contents of the book are being presented. And he's got a great energy. It's really very storytelling kind of medium, and it's a lot of fun. Unless you much prefer reading, I highly recommend the audiobook if you can. But he talks about voids define values. And that's true. Whatever we miss via either personally or as a family, whatever we don't have defines what we focus on. Let me give you an example. There's this other presenter called Douglas Kruger. Look him up on YouTube. He's actually very good. I believe he's South African, and I've watched many of his lectures or many of his kind of presentations, and he talks about how we inherit a lot of our views and values, and he talks about how we inherit views of money, but we inherit a lot more than that. But his shining example of this is his grandmother, who said, but you have to go to school so you can get a good job, so that you will have enough money to buy food and not starve to death. Seems a little overdramatic, but to be fair, his grandmother grew up in the 1920s and went through the Great Depression, where starving to death was a thing. It was kind of a worst case scenario, but it did happen. So her view of going to school and get a good job was to not starve to death. It wasn't to get ahead or to thrive. It was to assure your survival. But that holds true of our roles or our place in society, whether it's a formal caste system, which is kind of imposed on us, or whether it's something a little less formal, or kind of even just kind of the blue collar, white collar kind of belief in America, where it's, blue collar workers will save and send their children to college so that they don't fall into the blue collar life. And those are very much imposed views, imposed beliefs, imposed values. And the children don't necessarily share them because they don't have the experience that kind of brought them to that. Lonely children, whether you were an only child or whether you were the quiet sibling who kind of got overlooked because you didn't, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? Well, maybe you didn't make a lot of noise. Maybe you were quiet and you were the bookworm and you kind of sat in the corner, and because of that, you kind of got overlooked a little bit. Lonely children crave more than anything friendships, an attachment, whether that's to an individual partner, a small group of friends, or a group. They can become wildly active in church groups, or sometimes to more nefarious ends, something like fundamentalism, or get in with a bad crowd. And then of course maybe they find AA, which is not a bad group to be in, but generally the conditions for getting there are not ideal. Generally. But the big question comes to, and especially for those of us who have had our life rearranged in a rather forcible manner, right? Because we lost our wife or our partner, or because maybe it was through being on the receiving end of a divorce, or rather brutal divorce, who knows? Those of us who have had our lives kind of upended, we really have to look at these beliefs but this applies to everyone too, let's be honest. We have to look at our beliefs and choose and analyze what we've taken on, what we've inherited, what we've taken on through exposure. Maybe we've had maybe we had a really bad experience with the hotel industry, and we go, wow, working in a hotel sucks. Well, maybe it doesn't for most people. Maybe you just had a really bad experience, and that's a belief that you hold because of that, and that's fair. But what have you taken on through inheritance? What have you taken on through exposure? And what have you taken on through choice? What have you chosen to take on? Perfect example of, I know, and you probably know a lot of people, you might be one of these people who your job or what you choose to spend your time on, you didn't choose it initially. You didn't choose it because it uplifts you and challenges you and makes, and it's what you love. It could very well have been, look at the build on him. He should be part of the basketball team, the football team, hockey team, whatever. If all the kids on your street play hockey and that's pretty much all there is to do because that's all the other kids want to do, well, it's either hockey or do your own thing. Well, there's a lot of kids who wind up playing hockey because that's what there is to do. It doesn't move them. It entertains them for a while, but it's not something that it doesn't drive them, right? So, or how much of what you do, the efforts you've gone to in school or in life, are to appease or gain approval from somebody important in your life, whether it's a parent or the family in general, or the family name, gotta uphold the family name. Or I know of a wonderful couple who, she was Hungarian, he wasn't. The parents didn't approve because he wasn't Hungarian. He treated her like a princess. They were a wonderful couple, but he's not Hungarian, he's not good enough. How much of that is by your choice and how much is imposed? And why does it matter? Well, here's the thing. I talk a lot about dating and relationships and finding relationships, especially after a life upended. And because no matter what, beyond the initial attraction, the chemistry, the novelty, the similar interests, don't get me wrong, similar interests are great, but we align our expectations and our priorities most effectively and most easily with somebody who shares our values. And that happens over the long term, unless there's something drastic that changes the values. Your values can remain aligned, and it makes it easier to come together. And don't get me wrong, shared interest is great, but if you don't align expectations, because we talked about expectations in the last video, expectations or priorities, and then we wind up misaligned, it causes friction, it causes miscommunications, and it can lead to resentment, which leads to nothing good. So, maybe you're listening to this and going, geez, well, where do I start? I'm not sure. If you need to talk this through with somebody, if you just want to know more, if you want to find out what else I talk about, hi, my name is Richard Strother. I am the Widower's Wingman. I help people find relationships after their life has been upended by a loss. Mostly men. You can reach me at thewidowerswingman.com. There you can book a free call. It's not a sales call. I really do want to get to meet people and kind of see where I can help you and how I can best help you. Even if that's, make sure you get to the right resources. But I am here to help. If booking calls a little too much, there's also a free, there's another free option, which is there's a Circle support app. And that's available on iPhone, iPad, the iOS and Android platforms. It's free. And I host a group every Monday night. You can find the link in the description below, as well as thewidowerswingman.com. And there, I have a group every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. You're welcome to join that. We cover a whole lot of topics there, particularly around moving forward. Like and subscribe if you want. But more importantly, if this video is You know, if this kind of pings something for you, or you know somebody who could benefit from it, please do share it. It only helps if it gets into the hands of the people who need to see it. Beyond that, I'll see you guys in the next video if I don't get the privilege of meeting you first.